we are excited to have Don Merrifield Jr. coming to us from the Void as well. Don, how are you doing?
Very good. I'm glad no one confused me with Karina. So
Yeah, she has a lot more hair on the top of her head than you. Although I saw that photo of you and I had no idea you actually had hair before. I figured you were just born
that's
just smooth.
I was born bald and never grew hair in my 53 years. It was shocking. Yeah.
Charlie Brown.
Yeah. They're,
I
they're,
was
they're studying me at an institute in Sweden right now.
I was not expecting a photograph of you with hair that was like the longest, like luxurious hair that could have existed known to man. That was just
This is the sad ruins of a once great empire of hair, John.
oh, I love it, Don. I thought it was your natural, and I think it's great.
Thanks.
We're gonna talk about though the story that keeps on giving. Sorry, not sorry. Chris Vander Doelen addresses his COVID-19 diagnosis. Cripping this from the CTV Windsor story that they put out. Essex's Ward 3 councillor Chris Vander Doelen says it's been just over 2 weeks since he started experiencing mild symptoms that did worsen COVID-19. Says he's had trouble breathing, lost 12 pounds, and wasn't able to eat for 10 days straight. While Vander Doelen initially referred to COVID-19 as Chinese flu and Chinese originating virus, prompting enormous local pushback from members of the community leaders, and political leadership, Vander Doelen would continue to escalate his rhetoric, telling the media he was targeted for cancellation due to his COVID-19 positive status, due to his being a conservative, and that what he was going through amounted to a modern day, quote, lynching. Vander Doelen now says that the virus should not be taken lightly after having made light of it for months, even suggesting that his fellow council colleagues are seeking to drop public health guidelines in a rush to open the town and questioning whether that would be dangerous. Quote from Vander Doelen, maybe we should just let the professionals handle this and we should take their advice. Yeah, Chris, their advice said not to be a racist when labeling the virus. That's my own opinion, but they did say things along those lines as well. Vander Doelen has refused to apologize for his comments, and he's doubling down, referring to COVID-19 as the disease whose source we cannot discuss. Dude, if you're going to quote Harry Potter, get it right. It's the disease who's cannot be named. Like, that's what you would say. Do the Voldemort reference all the way through, you dementor. Anyways, the Integrity Commissioner is investigating this incident and is expected to present a report to council at the May 17 meeting. I don't think it should be a surprise to anyone that he's doubled down again with, what I call the Voldemort addendum that he's put onto it. But gosh, it's hard to take it seriously when he says we should let the professionals handle this and take their advice. Doug, I saw you viscerally react when I said that sentence. So let's bring your voice in right off the bat.
So many directions to go with this. Mr. Vander Doelen just can't help himself, it seems. He knew what was needed to defuse this situation. He knew what he needed to do in order to make this go away and make some amends with the community. And he chose not to do that. In fact, he chose to play silly games in referring to COVID-19. It's terrible that he was very sick. And that is really unfortunate. And nobody deserves COVID-19. But you'd hope that an experience like that might bring a little bit of maturity to his thinking and to his approach to this issue. It doesn't seem to have happened, and that's really unfortunate. I'm not sure if what's going to happen with the Integrity Commissioner report, and I'm not really sure that I care. The sanctions that the town council can put on him are pretty limited. I think stripping him of his committees and docking him 90 days pay would be the two things within their power to do. I think that Mr. Vander Doelen has he's been put on full display. There's been a lot of media focused on his comments. I think it's pretty clear how he operates and what is important to him and what is not important to him. Hopefully, electors in Ward 3 of Essex will take note and consider that when they cast their vote next time. But one thing I did want to mention before we hand it over to Don is it's April 21st. And as of right now, Chris Vander Doelen last tweeted on April 10th, 11 days ago. So it would appear that he has canceled himself. So I'm not sure if he's going to come back to Twitter at some point in the future, but he's not engaging on social media right now. I don't know if he's ever had an 11-day stretch where he didn't tweet in the past. So that's really interesting, and I wonder where that's going to go. If he's swearing off of social media forever, or if eventually he will come creeping back onto our timelines.
Well, that's interesting. I never considered that the self-cancellation. Apt, very apt. Don, what's your take on this?
Well, I don't think Chris is the type of person who's going to cancel himself. If you believe what he said he's been really sick for the last couple of weeks, so maybe that's prevented him from tweeting away. He may have got the new Ted Nugent box set, and he's been listening to that for the last week. It's very entertaining. Also, another person who, at least you got the reference. Yeah, it's at the end of the day, the electors have to decide what's appropriate. I mean, I don't think when they elected Mr. Vander Doelen that they didn't know who they were electing. I mean, Chris was popular, good or bad, in the newspaper for his opinion columns. He was very, he created a lot of comments when he wrote his articles, and I guess that was his job, and well done. But he didn't hide his definitely kind of right-wing leanings, definitely ultra-conservative kind of attitude towards things. So, I'm not really surprised by any of this. I think what we have to remember, I mean, we've been talking about COVID for over a year now, and, we've said many times that, well, I've said many times, but I'm sure you guys have agreed to me. We talk about numbers and we talk about how things, are going. These aren't numbers. These are people. People are dying. People are getting sick. People are getting, maybe not dying, but having long-term conditions that they're dealing with because they got COVID. And, this whole thing over the last year has become hyper politicized, and it really shouldn't. It's a health problem. And the only people we should be listening to are people who deal in this kind of stuff. Doctors and scientists and virologists and epidemiologists, and the politicians should just basically shut their mouths. But unfortunately, the reality is it has been hyper politicized. And the reality is, if you listen to what Chris said, I mean, you can go on Facebook and find, a lot of people who agree with what he said. So, right or wrong, I think it's going to come down to, the next election, people to have their say on what Mr. Vander Doelen, if they want to vote for him again. And as much as I disagree with the way he framed everything, and I think it's just throwing fire on a large burning dumpster that's been going on with the whole politicization of COVID, it isn't helpful. And I think, I'm not going to say Chris doesn't know what he's doing, but I think Chris does know what he's doing. But I think sometimes they have to remember that it's very different being a politician than it is being a writer in a newspaper, especially an opinion columnist. And I don't know, maybe he's finally, I don't know if he's learned his lesson, and I don't even know if there's a lesson to learn. But I think when you're an elected official, you have to choose your words a lot more carefully, especially when you're talking about a topic that is literally killing people every day.
Don, I want to ask you something, and
Yep.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. And maybe we can all kind of register our opinion on this, but I'm really interested because you said something about Vander Doelen that I want to explore. Do you think that tweet was racist?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I think.
Okay. Do you think that Vander Doelen knows that it was a racist statement to make?
Yeah, I think he knows what he was saying. I think he knows it was an inflammatory statement, and whether he thinks it's racist or not is probably irrelevant, because when you say something, especially as a politician, it's the people receiving it, I think, and how they perceive it, which is more important than, the way, the way you say things is very important. As a politician, you have to be cognizant of that.
So this is I'm hesitating here because I really don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm really interested in exploring this because you said Chris is known for his right-wing views, and I agree with
Yes.
that. He's known to be a right-wing pundit. Is racism a right-wing view?
No, not at all. I don't think so. I think there's racism on all spectrums of the political
Yeah,
world.
and I thought you'd say that, and I think that's fair enough. But like, do you think Vanderdolin has flirted with racist statements in the past, like as a journalist? Do you think that that's something that's been standard for him going back to, when he started as a columnist?
It's hard to answer because, I used to read, many of the opinion columnists, but to pull out some of Chris's stories from years ago off the top of my head is hard to say. I think Chris, as an opinion columnist, liked to inflame things, and he wanted to create comments, and he wanted to create maybe animosity to let people fight it out on the comment section. I think that was kind of his job. A lot of people didn't like him for it, didn't like the thing he says, but that's kind of what he was hired for. But I don't think that's his job anymore. So it's hard to say. I don't think he's doing anything too different than he did before. And I don't think Chris believes what he said was racist. But as I said, as a politician, I think it's more important that you understand how your message is going to be received as opposed to what what your thought was behind it when you did it.
Yeah, so I agree. I agree with what you're saying there, and um, I think that if you take that, isn't this funny, bad kid at the back of the class type of mocking approach to issues that are serious, like racism, it doesn't matter whether you in your heart are a racist or not, because you are making that problem worse. And that's what I believe that Chris Vander Doelen has done with this tweet. But what I wanted to explore here is my impression of Vanderdolin is that he's always been, at least as long as I've been aware of his opinion columns and his opinion in social media and whatnot, he's always been very right wing.
Mm-hmm.
He always enjoyed the baiting organized labor. He always enjoyed like picking on issues that were sure to inflame people, just as you said, drive up the comments and stuff. What's new, I think, is the racist comments. And I think that that's new in North American political discourse, that there are some segments of the political spectrum where racism or flirting with racism, being cute with racism is now okay. And I put that to the rise of Trumpism in the US. And I think that, look, I don't think Chris Vander Doelen is a particularly bright guy. I think he is deeply steeped in conservative political culture. I think that he is deeply engaged with movement conservatism and has been for a long time. And I think that as the Overton window has shifted, as it has become more acceptable to be overtly racist in conservative circles, that Vander Doelen has just not noticed the bathwater getting warmer around him. And this is where this comes from. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I can see that it's it's the boiling frog metaphor, right? You don't know until you're dead. I don't look, full disclosure. Chris has been on the show. Chris has interacted with us before, and I always kind of liked Chris. I thought he was funny. I got along with him. When he'd come hang out at Reno's once in a while. Uh, I'll give you my true, honest opinion. I always thought Chris, as an opinion columnist, said some things just for the sake of look. If you've listened to this show long enough, I say some stupid things just to get a reaction out of people, and sometimes I don't always mean it. I'm playing a character for lack of a better
Have you
term.
ever said something that you knew would hurt people?
No, I've said stuff that after the fact that I probably shouldn't have said that, and it probably did upset some people, and I felt bad about it. I'm not a politician, so I've never been called out publicly to apologize to people.
Intent is that difference.
Yeah, and that's the question I have on this. And at the end of the day, I mean, Mr. Vander Dolen's a politician, and what he says matters. And I don't think I think he's aware of that. And he said this on purpose, and he knew the connotation or what the meaning was, or how that phrase has been used for the last, ever since COVID started, starting with Trump with the China flu and all the other, mildly racist things he said, names he called the flu just to blame it on the Chinese. So, you know, for him to come out and say that, I mean, his words speak for himself. Does Chris give a rat's ass what I think about him? No, probably not. But at the end of the day, he's a politician. He has to, and this is a serious topic. We're not talking about, you know, unions suck or pro labor or pro business or whatever the case may be. We're talking about people dying every day. And there's a million reasons behind why people are still dying. And again, this has been hyper politicized, but he's a politician and he's not, and what he said added nothing to help the situation. Like I said, it was throwing gasoline on a fire. I believe he knew what he was doing. Maybe he thought it'd be funny. I don't know. I don't know what his intent was when he did it, but all you have to do is read his words and make your own judgment on that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll leave with my thoughts on this. You know, Doug, I 100% I agree where you're coming from as well, Don. I don't believe that he didn't know what COVID stood for. Maybe a year ago, but for someone so steeped in, you know, just in Trumpism, who's written about it before, who has spoken about it before, you can't spend a full year pretending like your head's been under a rock and you didn't hear the president of the United States for day after day after day call it the Chinese virus, the China virus, as he did a voice with it to try to make it worse. You don't get to say that you didn't hear that, especially as someone so steeped in media, the way that we know Chris Vander Doelen is. I don't buy it. It's a ridiculous argument. I don't think he thought that there would be as much of a pushback. And I think that he had to go and find some kind of off ramp from these comments. And, you know, he's still doubling down on it, but he's walked it back a little bit. But, you know, I find it most interesting. Doug, you were talking about, you know, and Don, just this idea of, you know, infusing that back of the classroom comedy, if you will, into a place where it doesn't belong at all. And the first thing that came to mind was, I think, the most recent Dave Chappelle special that I watched. And it's really interesting. He talks about COVID. He talks about contracting it himself. But there's one thing he says, and he goes, Donald Trump, it's not fair. How did he walk out on stage and say Kung Flu? That's absolutely hilarious. I should have been the one to say that at a stand-up comedy show. It shouldn't have been the president of the United States. That's terrible for politics. It's more so terrible for comedians. And, you know, the joke aside, you know, Kung Flu is obviously as hurtful as Chinese viruses. And there's lots to be said about where the line in comedy is. Comedy has a specific purpose and politics has a specific purpose. And, you know, that melding between the two, you don't get to be the provocative asshole on the outside once you're on the inside, unless you want to be. And, you know, I guess maybe it's something like, you know, the like Marjorie Taylor Greene or something in the US. I thought of, Doug, when you said, you know, strip him of his powers from the committee. Like, on the one side, okay, good. If he's not on a committee, it removes his opportunity to be involved. But on the other side, that means that a constituent is deprived as having a representative advocating on their behalfs at the committee level. So, you know, there's so much to still unpack from this issue. It's like it evolves every week. I'd like to not have to talk about the CVD issue, but something tells me we're going to be able to go for a turkey on it and get one more out of it. But for right now, we've got the opportunity to move on. I think we should take it. Yeah, we will move on and place our outrage where it belongs. Moving on to our last article here. The Windsor-Essex Economic Development Corporation defends their recent spending on the hospital campaign. Windsor Star's Dave Battigello put this out. It's hard to see Windsor-Essex. It's hard to see Windsor-Essex with a substandard healthcare system. That's what the Windsor-Essex County Development Corporation CEO told City Council when it comes to trying to get investment in this region. It's also why, he says, WEEDC spent almost $300,000 on an outside consultant pushing for the mega hospital. CEO Stephen McKenzie was called to City Council to answer questions about WEEDC's outside consultant spend, given that the City of Windsor contributes roughly $1 million to its annual operating budget. Ward 3 City Councilor Reno Bordelin expressed concern, saying that he's heard from small business owners that were upset about the spend, including the lawn signs and the Christmas cards that were, of course, part of it. He said that there are other groups that exist in Windsor for hospital advocacy, specifically mega hospital advocacy. So Why lobby the government? Why create a petition? Quote, the line was, why not work with these groups instead of spending this money on the campaign? Now, McKenzie defended the spending, and he said there's a big key difference between what WEEDC did and what everyone else did in the city. WEEDC was able to accomplish it. Everyone else sucked. That's what he said. Quote, they were not making the connection and getting their message through at Queen's Park. That was the difference with this campaign. Maybe so. I think it is hard to state that Queen's Park hasn't heard about advocacy for the mega hospital one way or another down in these parts. McKenzie estimates 300,000 people were reached by the We Can't Wait campaign, with 3,500, count them, 3,500 emails sent from residents to key government leaders. Bordelin went on to question a full-page congratulatory ad spend as what he called a victory lap after the funding was secured. He said we'd see upset small business owners with the ad given the ongoing pandemic struggles. Now, McKenzie pledged moving forward that all future expenses in advocacy for the new hospital will occur in-house. And he did refer to the mega hospital as a huge legacy project, just like the Gordie Howe International Bridge. I couldn't believe just that he would say that other groups' efforts had failed. And that's what the key difference is. Obviously, he didn't say it in those words exactly, but that's the takeaway from the message. That's the only defense that there was of this spending. Doug, what was your take? I know that you spent some time watching because, you know, you are a sadomasochist who loves to watch these long meetings. What was it like? What was the grilling actually like on screen?
So it was interesting. It was interesting to watch Stephen McKenzie defend the indefensible. And in my opinion, this spending is indefensible. But I think actually a lot of times when delegates come before council, whether the questioning is friendly or the questioning is unfriendly or somewhere in between, I think a lot of times you don't get a lot of new information beyond what's already in the report, what's already been in media, what has already been kind of discussed. I think we got some new information here. At least I think that there's something that can be gleaned from it. In 1978, Václav Havel wrote an essay called The Power of the Powerless. You guys ever read it?
Not offhand. It hasn't been in my quick readings.
So in the opening of that essay,
it's on my Kindle. I just haven't got to it yet.
In the opening of that essay, Václav Havel talks about the greengrocer, the owner of a grocery store, who has a sign in his shop window that says "Workers of the World Unite," and he unpacks what that sign really means, because the message that that sign is sending is not the message that it says on the pasteboard, right? It's, you know, the message is almost irrelevant, and it's worth a read, and it's really interesting. But the point is that Havel says the real message of that sign in the greengrocer's window is, I am compliant and I am willing to do whatever is necessary to get along. And that's what the real message that WEEDC, and by extension the city government, was sending to the provincial government here. This is not about 3,500 emails or some postcards. This is, you know, I do believe that the influence campaign was important, that the spend on the influence campaign to try to move people locally. I do think that there was, you know, potentially perceived to be some value in that. But I think what really happened here is that the Economic Development Corporation spent $300,000 to show the Ford government that it and by extension the city and the county were serious about doing whatever it takes to fluff the government and kiss their ass in whatever way necessary to support them and help them look good in exchange for this investment, which is politically useful to them. And the reason that I started to go down that road was when Stephen McKenzie was trying to defend spending $15,000 on a full page ad in the Windsor Star after the announcement of stage 2 funding. And he couldn't really effectively defend it because he doesn't want to say what I'm saying right now, which is that the real message was, we are willing to spend resources to help you, Ford government. That was the real message. Stephen McKenzie can't sit in council chambers and say, well, we're trying to show the government that we're willing to play ball with whatever harebrained crap they want us to in order to secure this investment. But that's what he was saying. And anyway, so I think there was something really interesting to be learned from that exchange. And I also thought Councillor Bordelin's questions were excellent at getting it out.
Interesting. Don, what's your read on the situation? It keeps evolving.
Well, I'm going to quote 1747 Roman Empire leader Jim.
Hey, man, I kept it in the 20th century, buddy.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, so there. How do you follow that, right? So I'm just going to say my comments and just pretend Doug didn't talk, because I don't know what the hell he's talking about. You know what? I do. Look, I think this was all a bunch of bullshit, big waste of money. I think this was certain people at the municipal government using WEEDC as a proxy to do their dirty work. And, and that's probably not even the right term. It shouldn't have been dirty work in the first place. Look, if you want to influence the government, the provincial government, the people who should be doing it for a municipal investment are the municipal politicians. Obviously, the mayor can't get everybody on board around this council table, so maybe he took things into his own hands, because at the end of the day, whether it was him or not, the buck stops here, as they say. I don't see any reason. I don't even see how any good comes out of taking out a newspaper article saying Yahoo, we won, that only gets distributed to people in Windsor. Like, we know about the hospital. You don't have to tell us about the hospital. You don't have to send us Christmas cards. No one gives a rat's ass about your Christmas card.
Premier's office gets all the papers, Don.
Yeah, do you really think he's sweet? I forgot how important the Windsor Star is. I'm sure it's right there on top of his desk.
Who's driving the one copy of the Windsor Star up the 401?
The
Premier needs it. It's printed. It's ready.
Right next to his 2014 BlackBerry and his 1982 Tandy TRS-80 Windsor Star.
So I know, yeah. So look, WEEDC can take the angle that, look, this is a big infrastructure project. Fine, it's a big infrastructure project, but it's going to happen whether WEEDC is involved in it or not. It's going to happen on the political stage. Look, we all know any kind of big investment coming from any government, there's going to be politics behind it. Look, this all started in the last government. They played some politics with it. They used it to campaign on to try and buy votes. Ford's doing, the Conservatives are doing the same thing. It's this the way the game is played. And if you're we pay attention to this stuff, but I don't think people are so naive that they don't understand there's politics behind all this kind of stuff. And again, it was a huge waste of money. I could understand the members being very upset. Look, we've talked a million times about the need for economic diversification and the need for changing the economy down here. And I don't see how this even comes close to the top 100 things that WEEDC should be doing. Then to come in front of council and try to defend it, to me, this is just another reason why maybe we don't even need that organization, because it just seems to be becoming a political arm of the mayor's office. And that serves no purpose but propaganda, political games, and in my opinion, a waste of money. And especially now when there's so many economic problems going on in this city, around the world, and in Canada and Ontario, blowing money on stupid things like this that are strictly political is the most useless thing that any politician can do with taxpayers' money, especially one who, pretends to be fiscally conservative, and the first chance they get to, maybe make some points politically, they'll throw out hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that. So I think there's a lot of, excuse my language, bullshit behind this whole thing. And again, to come and defend it, I mean, Councillor Bordelin did a good job asking the questions that he couldn't come up with real answers for. And, I don't know if they learn anything. I don't think we ever learn anything in this city sometimes. And this is probably going to continue because the people in power sometimes tend to think they're untouchable and they can do whatever they want.
I agree with both of your sentiments. I'm not going to be outdone by Doug, though. Not going to happen. You come prepared. How dare you? My brain started going there, and I had a bit of a joke, but I've turned it into something that I'm actually going to do.
In 3000 BC, back in the Egyptian Empire.
Hammurabi.
In 1835,
that's right.
When de Tocqueville wrote his first volumes of Democracy in America, he identified.
Oh God, you're serious?
No, I am. He identified 5 specific values that made America successful in being a democracy. The first one being liberty. I'm not going to argue that. We obviously are. But the next one being egalitarianism. And I don't think that you can say, obviously, that the mega hospital debate, the location, and this use of spending dollars is egalitarian in any way, shape, nor form. He goes on to talk about individualism. Sure, that's a big part of it, but then talks about populism here. Obviously, this is populism, top-down populism. We're being told what we should want, which leads into the final, which is, laissez-faire form of government. And there's nothing laissez-faire about, this hybrid we have between government and the Economic Development Agency, and one working for the other at the highest level. So I pulled that out of my ass there, de Tocqueville's 1835 Democracy in America. But I think it's a useful matrix to be able to shove local decisions through, because at the end of the day, when we talk about people not being involved in the political process, when we talk about people getting burnt out from the process, I mean, these are some of the core issues as to why people do feel left out.
I've been on this show for 5 years, and it's finally getting good.
Finally, yeah. We're finally in Doug's wheelhouse here. My question is, John, what else do you hide in your ass that you'd like to share with us?
Well, for your consideration, Don,
There we go.
Let's use that as a segue to our newest and outgoing segment. Oh, God, outgoing segment. For your consideration. This is a new segment. We have appropriated it from Canada Land, thanks to our co-host, Pat Papadeus, who made a really great suggestion. They refer to it as duly noted. We're going to call it For Your Consideration, and this is going to be the only time that we ever reference where it came from. Hope you've been listening moving forward. It's ours and always has been. Doug, what's for my consideration from you?
This week, I want to draw your attention and everyone else's to Fraser Father's blog, not the most recent one, but his weekly blog, his pandemic diary, which is a really interesting document in general. But a few thoughts on week 56 has an extended set of observations about the Greater Essex County District School Board. Fraser is one who pays attention to the school board. He watches the meetings. He pays attention to the proceedings. And we don't hear a lot about school board politics in local media, and I understand why. But I think if you want to get a handle on the dynamics of the school board and understand where it's falling short as a governing body, you could do a lot worse than to read a few thoughts on week 56 from Fraser Fathers. I highly encourage it.
Hey, thanks for sharing that, Doug. I'll have to check that out. Don, you got any? No, I don't think you do. Do you have anything you want to bring to the table right now?
No, I was going to do a bad take on a Stephen Colbert comedy bit about evil bears, but I thought I'll just pass on that. It's probably only funny in my head. So I'll pass it on to you, Johnny. Go back to pulling shit out of your ass. Literally, yeah, there you go.
Well, for your consideration, listener, the topic I wanted to bring up, I found really interesting, was Mayor Dilkins made a plea last week for more vaccine. Nothing to be surprised there. What I did find most surprising, however, was that the mayor was suggesting an end run around the province of Ontario, around the Premier Ford, and was appealing directly to the federal level, it sounded like, asking for Prime Minister Trudeau through Health Canada or Procurement Canada to send the vaccines directly to the 34 local health units, to remove the province from the delivery and, I guess, allocation of it entirely. I found that to be incredibly interesting. We've seen this mayor down here, Mayor Dilkins, really try to, I don't know, attach the brand, try to stroke the Ford Nation brand in positive ways. I was surprised to see such a, appeal to the federal government, but also, what could be interpreted as a backhanded slight against the provincial government. That was my take.
So was I the only one concerned when Jon previously talked about pulling stuff out of your ass, then went straight to stroke something, and then it just I thought it was going downhill right from there. I thought this is going to end poorly.
Well, you made sure it did, Donald. Just what we
Thanks.
expect from you, my friend.
That's right. Vote for me in your next Essex County Council election. I'll be running in Chris Vander Doelen's ward.
You've already got the signs.
I do. Ward 3 that I pre-printed from I don't even know when I ran last. 2010. I don't know when it was.
Do you still have your signs, Don?
Swear to God, they're in my basement. I should actually hang a bunch back here on as my backdrop when I do the show.
You definitely should. See, there's a guy who is really invested in politics. I know you still got the signs.
Still got the signs, the frames, everything good to go.
It's something that I often ask unsuccessful candidates. Did you keep your signs? It's a question that I often ask, and it's really interesting who does and who doesn't. And that's really cool that you've still got them. And you might need them next year in Harrow.
If it means anything, I just got rid of my hair gel about 3 years ago, and I still have stage clothes from 1990 sitting in my closet that there's no way in hell I could fit in anymore and
Duly
not get
noted.
arrested. Yeah, that's my duly noted. Don't go in my closet.
That is a show. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Tonight, we had the regular panel of myself, Jon Lidke, Doug Sartori, and Don Merrifield Jr. Had a lot of fun. We talked about Chris Vander Doelen and his not apology. Talked about WEEDC's defense of the indefensible and the launch of our For Your Consideration segment. So for your consideration, this has been Rose City Politics. So glad that you joined us tonight. If you are following us on Patreon and you're subscribed, thanks. If you're not, get to patreon.com/Rose City Politics. We need that cash. Thank you to BizX Magazine. We appear there monthly and online at bizxmagazine.com. Of course, available on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and all of your favorite podcasting apps. Like, share, and subscribe. We broadcast on tape every week, and it wouldn't be possible without the kind support of Liuna 625, Building Better Communities. This has been a podcast. We will see you all next week. Thanks for joining us, folks.